Hi, I'm Lisa Cole. Start of the pandemic, and with the recent restrictions announced on September 15th, we felt it was timely to hop back on and to provide some guidance and some information in terms of the many questions I'm sure each of you have already. Again, I'm sure, like us, many of you debriefed with your teams this morning or had some conversations about what this means. And I'm sure there are more questions than answers right now. So what does this all mean? Obviously, there is some information on the Government of Alberta website. And if you go to the recent news and the new public health measures that have been implemented province-wide, you will see the new restrictions for workplaces and the mandatory work-from-home measures, unless the employer has determined a physical presence is required for operational effectiveness. There's restrictions on private social gatherings, places of worship, outdoor events and facilities, of course schools, children's sport, performance, recreation, extracurricular sports, special interest, children's activities. So those all came into effect as of today. There are also additional measures that take effect on September 20th. Those measures impact restaurants, weddings and funerals, retail, entertainment, recreation facilities, sport, fitness, performance, recreation, and there was also the announcement about the restriction exemption program that's being introduced. So starting on September 20th, vaccine-eligible individuals will be required to provide government-issued proof of immunization or a negative privately paid COVID-19 test from within the previous 72 hours to access a variety of social, rec, and discretionary events throughout the province. So there's some details about the restriction exemption program on the Government of Alberta website, and we'll include that information in this post. Certain spaces that are participating in the program, including restaurants, bars, and indoor organized events for people aged 12 and older, will be required to show their proof of vaccine or that negative test result. Businesses that implement the restriction exemption program would operate as usual, provided they are serving only people who have proof of immunization or who have that negative test. So again, when you go into the details, that means that you could immediately, without restriction, as of the 20th, serve any individual eligible for vaccination who has proof of a double vaccination, that has documentation of a medical exemption, has proof of the recent negative COVID test result. Those under age 12 would not need to provide proof of immunization or a negative test to enter a participating business, and it doesn't imply, the program doesn't apply to businesses or entities that need to be accessed for daily living. So lots of information that there was to digest in the press conference, and certainly for those who missed it, you can check that out on the Government of Alberta YouTube channel or through alberta.ca on their news page. You can watch the video again. I've personally watched it 3 times now just to try to capture all the information in addition to reading the press release and the requirements. Like many of you, I'm sure there's lots of questions because there is a lot of gaps in the information, and we certainly recognize that. We had the opportunity to meet with Minister Schweitzer in a meeting format, virtual meeting format last night at 8:30. Went to about 9:45, and several chambers and business associations were on that from across the province. It provided us with immediate access to government to ask some of the questions that we knew were surfacing already, even as businesses were tuning in last night. So here's some of what we know so far. Will businesses have to apply for the exemption status? The response was that at this time businesses won't have to apply. There will be auditing and enforcement, and similar to what we experienced before, complaint-driven processes. Where restrictions start on September 20th, do businesses continue operating under current protocols until these new protocols come in on the 20th? So we were able to get clarification that as of midnight last night, so on the 15th, and starting on the 16th, the masking and physical distancing will be in place, so under the current restrictions, and the alcohol curfew still applies. When September 20th hits, the additional restrictions start, where it's limited to outdoor dining only unless you have the exemption program in place. If you have the exemption program in place and you're requiring proof of vaccination, you will be able to continue to allow dining indoors, and you will not have to limit liquor service to those guidelines or to the timelines. And that's as of the information received, knowing that they're still working on all the guideline documents. We asked if there was some additional clarification on events and how that applies within the exemption program. So for example, if there's proof of vaccination, does that mean that an event, a business, or a service can be fully open, no masks, distancing, cohorts? Because certainly with the restrictions announced on the 15th, households are limited, so we were curious how that would apply in a broader sense. They did say the intent is to be able to operate effectively at capacity with the exemption if you're under the exemption program. However, there will still be mask requirements for certain types of events, and they're looking at fire code capacity restrictions. However, the department is still working on the guideline documents for those. We asked if the restriction exemption program can be applied to the mandatory work from home measures. And so they did state that they're leaving that up to businesses on how they're going to operate, as even vaccinated staff can spread, and so they want to limit spread and touch points. So they are leaving that up to individual businesses to determine whether you want to allow your staff to operate or to come into the office for operational effectiveness. We asked if businesses would be able to stay open later and serve liquor with the restriction exemption program, and they did state that response was a yes. As I mentioned, still lots of questions, more questions than we have answers at this point, but we wanted to ensure that we provided you the most up-to-date information as soon as possible to mitigate some of the questions that may be surfacing or that we know are surfacing right now. Some of the questions we've asked, so I had the opportunity, we were provided email addresses to connect with. For businesses, you can still connect with or go through BizConnect. But what we'd love to be able to do on behalf of our business community is aggregate some of those responses so that we can get quicker answers to the questions that you have. And we know many of you will probably have a lot of the same questions, and so we want to get that information to the government and back out to you as quickly as possible. So some of the other questions, so that you know what we've asked so far. We want to know when the guidance will be released, because they are working on new guidance documents. Essentially, Minister Schweitzer said that the announcement yesterday essentially created about a month's worth of work. And so certainly we know businesses can't wait a month for those guidance documents to be released. So we're asking for those to be released as soon as possible and to have some timelines so that we can let each of you know what that looks like. We asked whether businesses continue to contact BizConnect for questions, and if that department will be provided additional resources to manage the increased demand that will inevitably start. We know in previous rounds, previous waves, there has been significant delays in response from BizConnect, and we want to ensure that, again, businesses ultimately are supported through this and they're getting the information they need as quickly as possible. And we also asked what the response time for inquiries to BizConnect would take in order for you to receive a response back. We also asked for unvaccinated staff if they have medical exemption or rapid tests, can they attend work for operational efficiencies if required, so what happens in those cases. We asked if both a medical exemption and rapid test would be required, or is one or the other sufficient. We asked them to clarify for the exemption program the difference between customers needing to be vaccinated and employees, and how that dynamic works. We've asked if rapid tests were going to be made available for businesses to provide to customers as well as staff, and how that program works. For anybody looking for rapid test kits for your staff, you can order those free of charge from the Government of Alberta, and we have that information on our website, and we can post it in the comments as well on the Facebook Live. We also asked about essential services. There was very little that we heard and found out in relation to industries like the construction industry. So are those exempt from restrictions moving forward, or what does that look like, so that no industries are essentially left in the dark? We want to ensure that there's clarity in what this means. We also asked if in-person business meetings could still occur if proof of vaccination is required. We asked how food service would work for indoor and outdoor events, particularly community events, meetings, weddings, funerals, and how food service would need to be implemented. We were asking if masks would still be required as a baseline for those under the restriction and exemption program. We asked what businesses would be considered to be those that need to be accessed for daily living in the government's press release. And we also asked if venues implement the vaccine exemption program, are their clientele still limited to attend those venues in their own household, or can they attend with others outside their household? Because we know that has an impact on several different community events, and particularly those hosted by our not-for-profit community and different organizations throughout. And so we know that some of the information provided in the press conference talked about limiting your attendance to households, so we wanted to find out how far that extended and if that was going to be lifted as part of the vaccine exemption program. We also provided some recommendations, as we always do, to government, just to provide them some solutions in terms of what our businesses would need. And so we really want to hear from you. We want to hear your questions in particular. So what kind of information are you looking for to further clarify what these restrictions mean? They're looking for guidance from organizations like ours in providing that input. So take a look at the comment section. We'll post a couple of links there. In addition, you can email your questions to us at policy@medicinehatchamber.com. So again, those business-related questions that you have in relation to the new requirements that were announced on September 15th, if you have specific questions that we haven't already addressed, please do email us, and we'll collect those and send those up on your behalf. And in terms of staying up to date with all the information and resources, please do go to our website at www.medicinehatchamber.com. You can go to the drop-down Our Resources. In Our Resources, you will find, of course, our business news, but right at the bottom of that drop-down, you can see subscriptions. And we encourage you, if you don't get our weekly e-newsletter, please do subscribe. That is the best and most effective way to get the news that we send out. It's not subject to algorithms or whether you're going to see this video or not. And we can make sure that we're getting that information out to you as quickly as possible. Our subscription for our weekly newsletter is available to anyone, both members and non-members, and anybody from the public who's interested in that regular news. So again, you can go to www.medicinehatchamber.com go to our resources and subscribe to make sure you're getting the most up-to-date and recent news. We'll ensure that any of the other questions go through that subscription feed so that you're getting the information as we receive it. We thank you so much for your resilience, your strength, your commitment to this community. We know how difficult it's been. We hear you, we see you. We appreciate each and every one of you, and we want to ensure that we're here for you and that you have a trusted source that you can go to and ensure that you're getting the information or the support that you need. Take care and stay well.